he actually told me before I converted that it was always his biggest wish for his kids, meaning myself and my sister, to have a religion, because he's always worried for us, like as parents, they always want to be there for us, to guide us, to protect us. But he realized that at some point, he won't be there anymore. And he felt that religion was something that would always be there, and it would be something that, his children could lean on. So he was very, very happy actually that I found Islam and practicing in the way that I am now.
Hello and welcome back to Open House, where every conversation opens a new perspective. I'm your host, Durga. With Hari Raya just around the corner, today we are bringing you a very special episode with Nur Jihan, a Chinese Muslim revert, to share her journey and experiences with us. Jihan, thank you so much for joining us here on Open House. How have you been?
I've been good. So currently we're in the month of Ramadan, and I've been fasting as with all other Muslims in this month. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, Jihan, maybe we can start with your childhood. What was your childhood like? I mean, you come from a Chinese family, right? So what was that like?
Actually, religion was actually quite a big part of my life. So basically, when I was younger, I had this idea that there was a higher power, there was God. But because I observed like different people practicing their religion in different ways, I began to think as a young child that we are all praying to the same God, but through different proxies. Yeah. So my grandma, she was a Taoist. So my parents, they followed her practices, and we actually had the altars in our house. We would pray to the Guan Yin Ma. But then at the same time, my parents sent me to a Catholic school. So I went to 𝙤𝙤𝙚𝙧𝙚.
Okay.
Yeah, and over there we would sing hymns, say our prayers before or after recess. And then my helper at that time, who I was very, very close to, she was also a Catholic. So one thing that I like to tell everyone was that when I was young and after exams, for example, I would go to the altar and then pray to Guan Yin Ma to give me good grades. Then after that, I would run to my helper's like little cabinet, take out her rosary and her figurine of Mother Mary, and then pray to Mother Mary. Yeah, so that was how I was like during my childhood. But, things gradually changed, as you grow older. So sometime in my teenage years, I became agnostic. And when I was in uni, I actually became an atheist.
Oh, wow. So you really went through the spectrum. Okay.
Yeah. And it was only after I met my husband that, I got introduced to Islam. And that's where I tried to learn more about it. And following that, I embraced Islam.
Right. Now, speaking of your husband, maybe you could share a little bit about your love story. Yeah. How did you guys meet?
So basically, that was in uni. So I signed up for a youth expedition program to Borneo because I was studying environmental biology then. So I signed up with my friend, and that was when we met. He was just like this gangster. Basically, he and his friend, they were both like very cheeky, but little did we know they were, doing very well in school, in uni. So that one thing that created an impression on me was when we were actually setting up hammocks in the forest. We had to sleep there. And then it rained and my canvas actually collapsed onto my hammock. So it drenched my entire hammock. So I wasn't able to sleep. So I actually went back to the gathering area to seek help. And then he was there with his friends, just fucking. And I said that, my hammock collapsed there. Can anyone help me? And then he said something like, why don't you just take my hammock? I'll just sleep here on the floor.
Oh, what a gentleman.
Yeah, but actually after that, he told me that because he was too lazy to help me, reset up the hammock in the rain. So I just
took the easy way out.
Yeah. But eventually, they actually helped me redo my hammock, which took quite a while under the rain. So after we returned back to Singapore, I gifted him a keychain because I found out that he liked One Piece, the anime. And I don't know, he got touched by that. I don't think he was used to receiving gifts from girls. Yeah. So after that, he asked for my number. And then we started texting. And it was the first time where I felt like the conversation was very smooth. Yeah. So we texted all the way until like 2-3 a.m. And I actually had a flight to catch that morning to Hong Kong with my friends. Yeah. So after that, we just texted throughout the trip. And eventually we signed up for the same field studies module for our environmental biology course. And that was where, we got to know each other and he started to make his moves.
Right. Now, you mentioned that you grew up in a Taoist family and then you became sort of agnostic and then became atheist, right? So when you met your husband, right, you knew he was Muslim, right? How did that feel for you at that moment?
So when it started to get like a bit serious, like he was starting to ask if like we should make it official. He said that, right, that I'm Muslim and if we are together, it would mean that you have to convert. And I was like, wow, this guy very forward thinking because it's just like we just
got together.
Yeah. And I didn't expect for a relationship to be so serious from the start. But to him, this was very important because to him, if the girl isn't able to convert, then it would be a deal breaker and he wouldn't proceed and we can just remain friends. And he actually said that to me. So I kind of asked, like, actually, I'm quite ignorant about your beliefs and your practices. So why don't you explain it to me? So one of our first dates was actually a crash course on Islam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he was like, we believed in Allah, who is like the one and only God. And we have a messenger, Prophet Muhammad. And he explained to me like what they do, how they pray 5 times a day. And I actually asked him a very ignorant question. I said, I pray to Guan Yin Ma and I prayed to Mother Mary. So what statue do you have? Yeah. Then he said that, no, we don't. And that was actually very refreshing for me. And that got me very interested actually in Islam. And
that sparked your curiosity.
Yes.
Right. And how long were you all dating for before you got married?
I think about 3 years.
3 years. So in that 3 years, was your family aware of?
Yes. So right after I got back from my field studies module, I told my father, I was like, Papa, I think I got a boyfriend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How did they react to it?
He was like, oh, really? Then I said, but Pa, he's Muslim. And there was no change in his expression. He was just like, oh, really? Yeah, he was just shocked. But he told me that he trusted me. He told me that he trusted my choice and he couldn't wait to meet him.
I see. And how about the rest of your family? Like, do you have siblings? Or?
For my mom, she was very, very worried because she knew that, they had to fast and she knew that they had to pray 5 times a day. And she was worried that I wouldn't be able to handle it. Yeah. And that I would suffer, So she was constantly trying to tell me that, do you know what you're getting into? Don't commit first. You can get to know each other, but learn more about the religion first. My sister, she's like 7 years younger than me. So I think that time she was like in JC or secondary school. Not much reaction from her. But I think she felt very inconvenienced when I started to have to eat halal.
I
so
see.
A lot of places we couldn't go to because my family is like a foodie family. My father brings us to eat like delicious food all the time. And as soon as I made the decision to try and keep my diet halal, it was very difficult for them because, they wanted to include me. I didn't know what were the halal choices at that time. So it was very limited and I felt very bad. Yeah.
Now, so we move on to a little bit about your journey as a Muslim, right? What were some of the misconceptions? Like you mentioned earlier that you actually didn't have much knowledge about it, right? But as you moved into it, did you start hearing like what some misconceptions that you've, learned? Yeah.
So the one that I heard the most was from my mom's colleagues.
Colleagues?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she always kept it hush-hush. So even like 1 or 2 years in, she didn't really want to reveal to her colleagues that I was dating a Muslim guy because she knew that they had a lot of things to say. So when they found out, then all the negativity came. They said things like, oh, do you know Islam is terrorist? Are you sure you want your daughter to marry? And misconceptions like, oh, once your daughter marry into a Muslim family, you'll never see her ever again. They won't let her come back to you again. Some more you Chinese, things like that. So that really changed when my parents met his parents. And I always say that many people think that my husband was really the catalyst for my conversion, but actually it's his family. Like, there's this saying that goes something like, when you look at a wife, you will know if she has like a loving husband. Yeah. And when you look at his family, right, you'll know that they have a very loving God. Yeah. Because the way they are, right, is like they radiate light, Yeah, they are just like the most giving, the most kind, the most generous people. Like you would feel so at ease with them, and it really made me think like, wow, I want what they have in this family. And you can easily tell that they are this way because of Islam. because of the way they practice it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. So what were some of the things that you struggled with, maybe personally? Reverting, right? Because usually the term that we've used to is converting,
Yeah.
right? But, you've shared that, you felt like you reverted, right?
Yes.
So maybe you can touch a little bit on that.
Well, it's because of my childhood, basically, because I shared previously that when I was younger, I thought that, God was very accessible and everybody was just speaking to him in their own ways. So basically, we are just tuning into different frequencies, trying to get our prayers to him. So I got lost along the way, during my teenage years where I got a bit jaded. But Islam is when I felt the most at ease with communicating with him, and I felt the closest to him.
I see.
That connection with him was just direct. Yeah.
Right.
And I could feel it in my heart. So that was when I decided I think I'm ready to embrace Islam. And that is why I feel like I reverted, because I was always communicating with him previously, I felt.
Just with a different...
Yeah. And then now I went full circle, and then now I'm back with him again, Yeah.
Ah, that's really nice to hear. Now, what was your first experience, performing the prayer? Solat, am I right to say that? Yeah. What was that like? First time when you did it, how did that feel? And was it difficult for you to learn that?
The Muslim prayer is very physical. There's a lot of bowing, kneeling, and it was very, very hard for me. So actually, before my conversion, converts are actually recommended to attend a prayer workshop at 𝙩𝙚𝙚𝙧𝙚, which is like the convert center. So over there, we were taught I think it was a 10-lesson course just to learn about the basics of prayer. And it was hard because there was a lot of things to memorize. There was the movement, and it is a different language because we recite the prayer in Arabic.
Oh my! So you had to learn Arabic. Yeah.
So my husband was very supportive then. So whenever we were out, he would just run through the recitations with me to help me memorize before the next class, so we could go to the next step. So the first prayer was, I think I was more focused on my body. I was trying to
to figure out the body language.
Yes, trying to sit properly. And my father-in-law was so cute. He would get my sister-in-laws to sit next to me and say okay, Jinghan, you read loudly, okay? Then you listen to her, then correct her if it's wrong. So I felt very supported. And it was nice. Eventually I started to feel that little sweetness in my prayer, and it gradually became very easy. And prayer is now something that I look forward to just get away from life.
Right.
Sometimes.
So it's like your own quiet time.
Yes.
Yeah, between you and God.
Yes. Yeah.
So now, maybe you can share you mentioned earlier there's a conversion center, right? So, how long did it take for you to complete the conversion process? Is that the right way to say it? Complete the conversion process?
Oh, actually, you can just sign up and request to be converted. So it's whenever you're ready kind of thing.
I see.
Yeah,
so you take the course, and then whenever you're ready, you do the course. Is there a ceremony that they do? Or?
Yeah. So basically, they get the official or something. So they will guide you to recite the Shahada, which is the declaration of faith. And there will be witnesses, other Muslim witnesses, to sign off, to confirm basically that you underwent this declaration and you are now officially a Muslim. And we are actually given a conversion card that I actually put in my passport. Yeah, because I didn't change my name officially, but I have a Muslim name, which is Nur Jihan.
I see. So that sort of proves that what you have on your passport is valid.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm a Muslim.
Now, you mentioned that it takes a while to do your conversion. And have you ever felt like giving up? At any point in time?
Definitely. Okay, so there was the Introduction to Islam course, which is recommended for all converts to take before they undergo the conversion. I dropped out of the class twice. Yeah, so my husband signed me up. We attended the classes together, but few classes in, I would drop out because I would say things like, I cannot accept it. It just doesn't gel with me, the things that are being taught. So there were a lot of times during this period when I was learning about Islam where I felt oh no, maybe I can't accept it because it just doesn't feel right with me. Then he would say, okay, let's drop out. Then we'll try again next run. It will be a few months later and he would say, you ready? Come, let's try again. And I would try again. And then a few lessons in, I would say I cannot. Because if I continue, then I think I would resent it. Yeah, and it was only on our third try where I completed the course. And I sort of got to a place where I was able to reconcile it. So that period of trying to reconcile Islam And my beliefs as an atheist at that time took about, I think, 1.5 years. And it was a very painful period for me and my husband. And I was very, very frustrated. I would ask sometimes very rude questions, like from my view as a atheist. And it was very difficult for him to answer these questions. And he would take the questions home to his parents, and his parents would say, oh, maybe we should consult a religious teacher and then give me an answer. Yeah. And it was only after my marriage that my mother-in-law told me that during that period, my husband would wake up in the middle of the night to pray a special prayer.
Take your time. Yeah, take your time.
Yeah, he would wake up in the middle of the night to pray a special prayer for me to be guided. He knew it was out of his hands because, logically speaking, it was very hard for him to convince me, and he tried very, very long. So eventually he just left it to God. He prayed every night. And my mother-in-law said that was the period where she saw him the closest to God, because he was so desperate. And I never knew that until I got married.
And she shared with you.
Yeah, she shared it with me.
That's incredible to hear. Thanks for sharing that. Why does it make you emotional thinking about it?
The fact that, someone would love you so much and do things in secret, in the middle of the night, sacrifice his sleep to stand in prayer, to speak to his God, when he had no one else to turn to. Basically, no one could give him the answers that could satisfy me. So he had to rely on God and pray for him to open my heart. And I think that's really what happened. Yeah. It just felt like I was ready after that. Yeah.
And his love moved you?
Yes, definitely.
You mentioned that you went through the struggle with your husband, right? Would you change any part of that?
No, I wouldn't. Yeah, the struggle makes the journey. And I always believe that with the struggles, your faith gets reinforced. Yeah, if it was too easy, then perhaps I wouldn't cherish it. But because I struggled so hard for it,
to get the answers that you wanted.
Yes, to make sure that I was really ready and, I didn't have any doubts going into it. That was the assurance that I needed before I was ready to convert. Yeah, so the struggles were great. Yeah.
Now, we come to parenting, right? And, your identity as well, because you are Chinese,
yes,
but by faith you are Muslim, right? So raising children, especially in Singapore, we're very multicultural, like you mentioned yourself, growing up, you had a Taoist upbringing, and then you went to a Catholic school, and then you're agnostic, atheist, and then now you're Muslim. So do you find it challenging sometimes for your kids, because they too are exposed to different things? And in school, out of curiosity, do your children learn Malay or Chinese?
Yeah. So my kids, they learn Malay. At the start, I was also, debating with myself whether we should go for Malay or Chinese, but it was her choice. Yeah, she preferred to enter a madrasah system where it's an Islamic school, and they don't offer Chinese. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So she has to take Malay and Arabic. So it was just a very natural inclination towards Malay for her, because I live with my in-laws. Yeah. And they speak Malay all the time. And she picks it up, So I thought, just follow her lead. She knows what are her inclinations. Yeah. And we just support her fully.
How old are your kids? Like you have 2 children?
So my elder one is 8. So she's in primary 2. And my younger one is 5 this year, K1.
Kindergarten.
Yes, kindergarten.
Now, as a parent, how do you incorporate both your Chinese and your Muslim values with your children?
The interesting thing about that is they are actually quite aligned. Yeah, so I don't have to make a very deliberate effort to, always find a corresponding Chinese story to support this Islamic story when they are talking about some virtues or values that the kids ought to have. And my father is someone who loves the Chinese tradition. He would always tell me those very, there are some very amazing Chinese stories, shorts.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it's always so filled with wisdom and, values and virtues. And it's always very in line with Islam. So I've never really had the problem of, having to deliberately introduce them to my kids separately, but it just comes as an example, like, oh, Akong told me this story before and I think you will like it. And it just serves to reinforce the lessons that I'm trying to teach. So it's a good marriage, I would say. Yeah.
And how have the two families, how do you all come together, like, during festivals and all that? Like, do you still celebrate Chinese New Year? Because it's like more cultural, I would say. Yeah.
Yes.
How does that work? I mean, it's quite fun, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So when I first converted, then my father was quite stressed out because that would mean we would have to change our usual CNY Eve reunion dinner. We used to go to restaurants to eat, it's easier. But the year I converted, he actually suggested to his own brother that, why don't you all do it at my place? Yeah. And so he set up like a steamboat. And he ordered roast duck, roast pork, that kind of stuff. And they had their non-halal steamboat. But at the side, he set up another table for me, the halal table, where we would have our own halal hot pot. This year, actually, I had my new place. So I was very excited to have my whole family over to celebrate the CNY Eve together. But unfortunately, he sprained his back that morning. So I was so upset that morning because I had already prepared, the food that I was going to serve. I was ready to host them for the first time in my new home. So I was very, very down that morning. And my husband actually told my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law said, come, let's go surprise her. Let's go and celebrate CNY Eve with her. And they actually had a 鱼生 platter, a halal 鱼生 platter that was gifted to my sister-in-law. My mother-in-law said, give it to Jinghan's parents. Let's deliver it to their house because, uncle sprained his back. He can't celebrate. So before they came over to my place, they sent over that 鱼生 platter to my father. And then my sister-in-law, my mom-in-law, and eventually my father-in-law, my brother-in-law all came over to my place to celebrate CNY Eve with me. That's the beauty of my family. So I'm very thankful for them.
You have very supportive families on both sides, and that's so meaningful. And I think it sets a very great example for your children as well. Right. Now, at this juncture, clearly, you've been Revert for about 10 years now?
Yes.
10 years. Along the way, have you had any regrets?
Off the top of my head, not really. Yeah, like I said, this journey is something that I cherish a lot, and I embrace the hard parts and the easy parts equally. Yeah, actually, sometimes I feel that the hard parts is sweeter in a sense, because that's when you realize that, even with so much support around you,
it can still be very hard.
Yeah. And you really have only yourself and your faith in God to push you through. And that is very meaningful to me. So I don't think I would regret any part of it. Yeah.
So in your case, for example, have you faced any personal prejudices because you have?
I think just once. It was a colleague. And then he said something like, Singapore got no other Chinese guys, man. You must date a Malay guy. But it doesn't faze me because people who would say that to me are definitely not close to me. So it doesn't faze me.
Doesn't bother.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you face these prejudices, does it hurt your family?
Oh, I don't let them know about these things.
You don't? You keep it to yourself?
Because I don't want my parents to worry about me, because they carried a lot of worry. But, they had faith that I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was getting myself into. And they strongly believe in the support that my husband's family is able to give me. I think I can confidently say that he's very happy looking at the way that I have been living my life. Also, one thing I want to share once was, for Muslims, we actually do Umrah. Umrah is like a pilgrimage where we visit the holy sites in Mecca and Medina. So I went there in 2023. And so I posted a lot of reels after that about my reflections. And there was one day my father took a screenshot of my reel, and he said to me, Han, I am so moved to tears by this. I can feel your happiness and your peace and your contentment through this video, and I'm very, very happy for you.
Was that one of the most powerful things your dad has said to you?
Yeah, definitely. And he has done it like several times. Yeah, he has always told me that he's very proud of me for, going through this journey and sticking to it. He actually told me before I converted that it was always his biggest wish for his kids, meaning myself and my sister, to have a religion. Because he's always worried for us, like as parents, they always want to be there for us, to guide us, to protect us. But he realized that at some point, he won't be there anymore. And he felt that religion was something that would always be there, and it would be something that, his children could lean on. So he was very, very happy actually that I found Islam and practicing in the way that I am now.
Now, how has your husband's faith, like you shared a little bit earlier, right? About his love and his faith. How has his faith, influenced your journey?
So one thing that I would like to commend him for was the example that he set from the start. Yeah, so it was his priority to actually show me what is the Islamic way of life. So even if we were going out for a date, for example, he would plan it around his prayer timings, and he would say, "Oh, wait for me, I'm going to pray now." Yeah. So I would just stand there, in the car park, wait for him to pray. And then he would say, "Okay, now we can go." So even when I wasn't practicing and I wasn't like actively learning about Islam, I was picking up all these things.
Subconsciously.
Yes, like what were the timings? If you were to watch a movie, he would say, "Oh, this one is during this prayer timing, cannot," And he wouldn't be ashamed of it, I would say. He was very proud of his religion, and he wanted to show me how he was a Muslim. Yeah.
And what it meant to him.
Yes. And I think actually that's very powerful. Like, yes, at the start, maybe I would feel a bit pressurized, or maybe it would make me resent, prayers a bit because it inconvenienced us so much. But, over time, you really see the benefit of him doing that. And I learned that it was his father-in-law's advice. Yeah, so his father-in-law was the one who said that you don't push her too much in terms of the things that she has to do, but you never compromise your own religion. Yeah. So I have very wise, family members from both sides constantly guiding us and, giving us advice in this journey. And I felt that, it really paid off.
Sounds amazing. Now, Jihan, what would you say to those who are maybe struggling with, like, you have amazing family, both sides, right? But for those who may not be as fortunate, but, love is love, right? You can't predict the circumstances that you fall into. So what advice would you have for those who may be on a similar journey as you, but may not necessarily have that
same
support?
Level of support? Yeah, my heart really goes out to them. And, I usually receive a lot of messages from these converts or like potential converts telling me of their struggles of, very unsupportive parents. And it makes it very difficult for them to practice their faith. And I tell you, their level of faith is way higher than mine. Yeah, I only practice because it's easy for me, because it is facilitated for me, because everybody is so supportive of me. But for them, they have to do it in secret. But they would still do it anyway. So what I would say is that I know it's hard, but you really have to persevere. And there's this quote that I really like. It's something like, when I learned that God tests whom He loves, I took the pain like it was an honor. But I would change it. I wouldn't say it's a pain, but I would take the test as an honor. Yeah, because overwhelmingly throughout my whole journey, I felt that, the trials and the tests and the struggles are what brings you closest to God. Yeah.
That's really nice. Like, for parents, I think, looking at both sides of the coin, I think sometimes it's understandable, right? You've seen your child grow up in a particular faith and then suddenly, but I always feel that, would you rather lose the child, or, I mean? Like, so speaking of children, right? How would you react or respond if your children were to suddenly one day and wake up and say, "Mommy, I think maybe this is not for me. I feel like I want to, explore, like how you've explored different faiths."
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Yeah. Because of my journey, I want to be as supportive as my parents were towards me. So, even if it is something that is very hard for me as a parent to accept, I will not do things like, chase them out, threaten them, like I will disown you, or like what has gotten into you. I think in this kind of situations, like compassion and mercy is very, very important. I just hope that they will feel supported in making their decisions, but ultimately, guidance is from Allah, and I will leave it to Him and make a lot of prayer.
I mean, that's really amazing, having been on this journey yourself. It's amazing to see that as a parent, you feel supported and loved by your parents, and that you also want to offer them that same level of support.
Yes.
And of course, hopefully they make the right decisions for themselves. And I hope other parents can learn from that as well, right? Now we come to a very exciting part, like Hari Raya.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming around the corner in a couple of weeks, right? And you are fasting.
Yes.
Now, how are preparations going for you?
So for us, every day is just a mad rush, because we have to wake up very early, so about 5 a.m. and we will have our sahur, so our pre-dawn meal.
Okay.
And then after that, we'll fast throughout the entire day, and then we'll break fast together as a family at my father-in-law's house. It's always very nice because you will like a
big spread.
Yeah, so we will set up like a mat on the floor, and we will just eat. Just gather in a circle around the mat, and then we will have a lot of food.
And what are some of the Hari Raya traditions that you've come to love? Because you've never actually celebrated that before you got married, right? So what are some of the traditions that you've experienced and you've come to love?
Oh, I realized that all my favorite traditions are related to food. So,
You're a foodie.
So my husband's side, they have quite a big family. So the first day of Hari Raya, we would gather at his grandma's house. She has passed away a few years ago, but before that, it was really so fun. Yeah, so she would cook. She actually is kind of like wheelchair bound, but she would still cook. And she would fold and make her own ketupat. And she would cook all the dishes like rendang, what's that? Ayam lemak cili padi, sambal goreng and all that. Yeah, and all of my husband's side, all his cousins and all his aunts and uncles would come over, and we would just eat. We would just feast, after a month of fasting. And it's always very kecoh, very chaotic. Yeah, so one thing about my husband's family, as much as I make them sound to be very peaceful and very religious, they are very chaotic. It's so kecoh. Yeah.
Does your family join in? Your family join?
Oh, so in the first few years, yes, you would invite my parents, but they will be so like out of place. They would feel so awkward. But what my in-laws would do now is they would cook, all the Hari Raya dishes and then pack them in containers and have us deliver to my parents. So they get to enjoy. And my sister in particular looks forward to it every year. She's like, when can I get your mother-in-law's rendang?
Yes. I love like the Hari Raya dishes a lot. I love the lontong and thing with the
serunding, yeah.
And stuff like that. So what are some of your favorite Hari Raya dishes?
Rendang.
Rendang.
I love chicken rendang and I love beef rendang and I love lamb rendang.
Do you cook them?
I can't. So my mother-in-law is an amazing cook. She's like a master chef. So I just can't wait. So we usually try to help her. But there's this concept in the Malay community like air tangan or something like that. Like water from the hands. Something like that, So when they cook, it just tastes nice. And if
they know the portions.
Yes, and if I were to follow her recipe, I wouldn't be able to.
Be the same.
Yeah, it's just different.
That's really interesting. Now, how would you explain Hari Raya to, say, me, for example? Like I'm non-Muslim.
So it's actually a celebration for the month of Ramadan, because Ramadan is the most sacred month to Muslims. So it's really a month where we sort of reel in our desires and our stresses and just focus on worship. It's really a month of worship for us. And Hari Raya is the day where, Allah says, go ahead and celebrate.
Now, if you could invite one person to your house, like maybe past or present, maybe a loved one, someone you admire, it could be anyone, who would you invite to your Hari Raya open house?
Actually, I would really love for my grandma to have come and experience like Hari Raya with my husband's family, because my grandma, she was so accepting from the start. When she first met my husband, he gave her the salam. And she practically bragged about it for weeks to my uncles and aunties that, I'm going to get a son-in-law who will always kiss my hand. And she really had no objections, nothing, no negativity at all. And she accepted him wholeheartedly. She even, wore the tudung once because she was feeling very cold in her room. Then she suggested, how about I borrow Han's tudung? You get me one, I can wear like that. And then she actually wore it, and she looked so cute. But it was really unfortunate that, she never got to experience it. And, in her final months, she was just holding on because she said that she wanted to meet my child because I was pregnant then. Yeah, then shortly after my eldest daughter was born, then she passed away. So she never got to experience the festivities of Hari Raya, which I think she would thoroughly enjoy. Yeah.
I must miss her a lot.
Yes. Very, very amazing lady. Yeah.
All right. Now, Jihan, thank you so much, for sharing. I think it was really quite heartfelt, I feel. And I hope that others out there, who would be able to learn from your journey. But I think from what I hear, it sounds like there's a lot of love and support and that you've also had your struggles. It's not like smooth sailing all the way, right? So what is one sort of like advice that you would want to give for anyone in general, not necessarily for them, like maybe not just converting to Islam, but any type of conversion that they are facing or any struggles in life that they are facing, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I mean, outside the context of conversion, I find it quite difficult because my life now is very faith-centric. So ultimately for me, everything can be resolved with a conversation with God. Yeah. Which is also why I find it difficult to, advise my sister, for example, when she comes to me with problems. So a lot of times what I advise her are like the practical solutions. But ultimately there's this nagging voice inside where I just wish that they would give faith a chance. Because I feel that faith has completely changed my life and how I handle all the things that are happening in my life, and it has been the most life-changing thing for me. Yeah, so I'm very sorry. As a person who is so faith-centric,
not to worry. I mean, like for you is Islam, and I hope that anyone out there, if like let's say they are Christians or Hindus, they can relate to their own faith and
yes, definitely
hold on to that. Sometimes I think when you're lost and you feel like your parents or your loved ones can't help you, then maybe you're right. God is the only thing that you can look forward to. So I mean, it's just the life that you are leading, right? Thank you so much, and wishing you a very, good, I think, Selamat Hari Raya.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of Open House. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and leave in the comment section, upcoming guests that you would like to see. And remember, for every question that you have, there's always a guest that has the answers. And of course, check us out on our socials for more updates. And here's to wishing everyone a Selamat Hari Raya. Thank you.